Canada has not only been America's close neighbor, but also its largest economic partner. Millions of meals, prescriptions, Walmart orders, and even the cars we drive every day all depend on supplies from Canada. But now, that relationship is gradually fraying. And perhaps you yourself are also feeling it clearly.
We know that without our Canadian friends, it's just not the same in the Wildwoods.
I get back to my Canadian clients and I say, I don't blame you. I wouldn't come down to my country either if I were in your situation.
Canada is starting to cut supply chains, withdraw investments from some key sectors, and seek its own path in the unstable global economy. That is pushing a series of American corporations, from retail, food chains, to the pharmaceutical industry, into the risk of paralysis. But the ones who suffer the most are not the CEOs or shareholders, but ordinary American workers who are facing the risk of losing their jobs, losing their homes, rising prices, and the middle-class dream slipping further away once again. This is not a video to make you anxious, but rather a warning, based on real data and companies, affecting the lives of ordinary people like you and me. The content of this video is based on current data analysis and economic assumptions, without the intention of criticism or absolute prediction. We encourage you to broaden your search so we can have a positive discussion together. So, which companies are being most heavily impacted by Canada's withdrawal? Here are the top 10 American corporations that are under threat, and the reasons you should care. Walmart used to be a place that middle-class Americans absolutely trusted because it had everything, affordable prices, and employees who were always ready to serve. Moreover, Walmart is also the largest private employer in the United States, providing jobs for nearly 2 million American workers. And one thing few people know is that Walmart is also a huge importer of Canada, from food items like beef, vegetables, and milk, to consumer goods like toilet paper and medical equipment. Some Walmart distribution centers in the northeastern United States are entirely dependent on cross-border transportation with Canada. What would happen if Canada, one of Walmart's largest logistics partners, suddenly withdrew? Walmart has felt the impact. Retail sales in general in the early months of 2025 recorded the sharpest decline in 2 years. According to Reuters, Walmart's stock fell by up to 7% in the most recent trading session. Canadians are also abandoning Walmart. The supermarkets that were once bustling with shoppers are now deserted. American products on the shelves are almost untouched and have not decreased at all. The Buy Canadian movement has become a powerful wave in just 1 week, completely changing the way people shop and where they spend their money, especially since Trump announced the tariff regulations.
They are completely boycotting the American-made product.
It unnecessarily harms a relationship with Canada that's been such a good relationship.
Canada's turning away has left many Americans feeling disappointed and anxious. Even many people have expressed their dissatisfaction with the leaders of the country over the risk of losing the good relationship with the Canadian neighbor. When Canada began tightening the supply chain, prioritizing domestic goods, and increasing carbon taxes on exports, Walmart's import costs surged, leading to higher prices and reduced profits. In some areas, Walmart's doors have had to close. For many Americans, especially in small towns and rural areas, Walmart is not just a shopping destination, but a lifeline for millions of poor people. This is the only store within a radius of dozens of miles that sells a full range of food, medicine, clothing, fuel, and even household appliances. When prices skyrocketed due to rising import costs from Canada, the residents had no other choice. I have lived through 2 recessions, but if Walmart closes here, I really don't know how my family will survive. This is the common sentiment of millions of Americans who rely on small savings and hunt for weekly promotions to feed their children and the elderly. But the most heartbreaking part is the people who are working at Walmart. They are not investors, they don't have stocks, they don't have million-dollar retirement accounts. They are single mothers working night shifts to have health insurance, middle-aged men who once lost factory jobs, and are now quietly stocking shelves. Why does a corporation deeply connected to the working class have to bear the consequences of decisions made without anyone's input? Why in America can a retreat from the northern border shake the lives of people in the South? It is time for people to be protected from the fluctuations caused by international policies, instead of being left to fend for themselves like mere statistics. The government should consider establishing a supply chain stabilization fund for rural areas, where people have no second choice. For many middle-aged Americans, McDonald's has become a familiar part of their lives. It is a brand present everywhere across America. But there is one thing that not everyone knows. Canada is one of the most important logistical links for McDonald's North America. Alberta, where millions of tons of potatoes are produced and supplied each day. The cattle farms in Manitoba. Sauces and wrapping paper printed in Quebec. McDonald's in the US consumes a massive amount of goods from Canada every day. Refrigerated container trucks run overnight across the border, supplying more than 13,500 McDonald's restaurants in the US. And what if one day the border closes and the trucks carrying goods from Canada suddenly change direction? When Canada began implementing a domestic priority policy, tightening the export of agricultural products and food to the US in response to the Trump administration's tax policies. And so the bad news came to many American brands, including McDonald's, as the supply of potatoes and beef was disrupted. The prices of raw materials skyrocketed. Some restaurants have been forced to reduce their menus, remove combos, and even stop serving certain items like Big Mac or McChicken in the northern region. But the consequences do not stop there. For workers, especially part-time employees and low-level staff in the McDonald's system, their income and livelihoods are being directly affected. Shifts being cut, stores closing early, wage reductions, and especially the mass marginalization of young employees, immigrants, or unskilled older workers. A single mother working at McDonald's in Buffalo, New York shared, "I don't care who's debating in Washington. I only know that this week my store cut shifts because of a lack of supplies. And that means I don't have enough money to pay the electricity bill." And for long-time McDonald's customers, the feeling is disappointment. A burger that used to cost $1.50 now costs nearly $3. Not everyone can afford it. Especially for those living in poverty, McDonald's is the only place where they can buy a complete and satisfying meal. Why does a brand associated with the American working class have to struggle because of a trade confrontation they didn't choose? If McDonald's, a name associated with every corner of America, is also struggling, then who is safe? And do people still have a place to cling to when their wallets are empty? Target represents a smart consumption choice for the American middle class. At Target, you can buy everything from food, household items, and medicine to clothes for your children at reasonable prices. With over 1,900 stores across the United States and hundreds of thousands of employees, Target has become an indispensable part of everyday life. But few people know that Canada is one of the key logistical partners helping Target maintain those affordable prices. Many items at Target originate from or have ingredients sourced from the eastern and central provinces of Canada. Moreover, Target's distribution centers in states like Minnesota, Michigan, and New York also rely on cross-border shipping routes to maintain the speed of goods turnover. However, everything is gradually changing now. When Canada began prioritizing domestic goods, tightening informal exports, and raising taxes on consumer goods, shipments to the US sharply declined. This has led to a sad reality, with prices at Target starting to rise and many products being in short supply. Some stores in border areas have had to temporarily close due to insufficient supply. American consumers feel disillusioned right in their own homes. For them, Target is the most loyal place between quality and price. Now, they are faced with two choices. Either spend more money to buy things that were once very accessible, or give them up completely. A mother in Ohio shared, "I have been buying bath soap, paper towels, and snacks for my child here for 10 years. Now everything has increased in price by 10% to 30%. Who can afford these prices? And the greater worry falls on those working at Target, especially contract employees, part-timers, and older workers. Many people had left old industries to seek new opportunities in this retail system. But now, they face the risk of losing their jobs due to declining revenue, reduced shifts, and layoffs. Many workers and American citizens feel trapped between diplomatic decisions and trade conflicts without anyone asking for their opinion. If Target, a symbol of balancing cost and quality, faces significant challenges due to international policies, where else do poor Americans have to turn? For millions of Americans, especially the elderly, Walgreens is not just a pharmacy, but a part of their daily lives. Walgreens is present all over the United States, serving more than 8 million customers each day. But that's just the tip of the iceberg that we see. In fact, Walgreens heavily relies on the supply chain from Canada, especially for cosmetics and consumer medical supplies such as cotton gauze, masks, and blood pressure monitors. Canada is not only a close partner, but also the location where Walgreens has set up distribution centers for goods imported from Europe, before transferring them to the US via the northern border routes. However, since the Canadian government began prioritizing domestic stockpiling, tightening controls on pharmaceutical exports, and increasing healthcare taxes, Walgreens has fallen into a state of goods shortage. Hundreds of commonly seen items have disappeared from the shelves. The supply of insulin, blood glucose meters, masks, etc. has become scarce, and prices have skyrocketed. Consumers, especially the elderly, those with chronic illnesses, and low-income individuals, feel anxious and helpless. For them, Walgreens is not a choice, but the only place close enough and familiar enough to trust. When drug prices rise, many people start cutting doses and splitting pills. Decisions that seem ordinary in the White House can actually impact the health of millions of people. And behind the pharmacy counter, Walgreens employees are also worried. Many of them are part-time workers with limited health insurance and live paycheck to paycheck. When revenue declined, the company cut hours, streamlined staff, and many stores were forced to close in low-income neighborhoods. While politicians discuss economic security or domestic priorities, the sick, the elderly, and low-wage workers are gradually losing one of their last close pillars of healthcare. If Walgreens disappears from the neighborhood, who will take care of those who no longer have a place to buy medicine? For many Americans, especially the urban middle class, Starbucks is not just a cup of coffee, but a habit, an essential part of every morning. But Starbucks does not exist independently. Canada is one of the suppliers of roasted coffee beans, nut milk, and even important logistical equipment in the company's supply chain. Since the US-Canada trade relationship became strained, logistics costs have skyrocketed. Canada has imposed new tariffs on agricultural products, set high emission standards for cross-border trucks, and reduced the export of non-essential goods to prioritize the domestic market. Starbucks is forced to raise prices. In just the first 3 months of 2025, the average price of a latte in the US increased by nearly 11%, according to the Wall Street Journal. Some stores in small towns have closed down. No longer are there crowds bustling to place orders. Instead, there are empty chairs and staff tidying up in silence. Consumers feel abandoned. While they only need a cup of coffee to start their day, now even that small thing has become expensive and distant. Those who once considered Starbucks a safe stop now have to choose coffee or gas, breakfast or medicine. Many people choose to brew coffee at home to save as much money as possible. And behind the counter, there are young people, immigrants, and part-time employees who worry every day that their jobs at Starbucks could disappear at any moment. When sales decline, they are the first to have their hours cut. When the store closes, they are the first to be unemployed. Starbucks was once a symbol of modern life. Now it has become a clear example of a country in turmoil due to high-level political decisions. If a familiar cup of coffee is no longer easy, then what else is certain for the American middle class? Amazon is a place where you can bring everything home with just a click. With its smart warehouse system and delivery fleet that reaches your doorstep in less than 24 hours, Amazon has created a retail ecosystem that no one can match. But what we often overlook is that Amazon relies heavily on Canada. According to data from Border Logistics 2024, more than 20% of lightweight packaged goods delivered through Amazon in states like Michigan, New York, and Pennsylvania originate from Canada. Moreover, many manufacturing plants in Ontario and Quebec not only produce goods for the Canadian market, but also serve American consumers directly. Since Trump imposed tariffs on imported goods from Canada, the national government has encouraged businesses to prioritize domestic production and shift collaborations to many other countries. Just a slight push, but enough to make Amazon stumble. Warehouse, shipping, and labor costs in the US have risen. Some of this brand's border transit stations have been forced to close, lay off contract workers, and adjust delivery times. American consumers are starting to feel that Amazon is no longer the same as before. They are receiving their orders later. Some items have doubled in price, especially imported products from the north such as healthy food, high-end personal care items, and OEM electronic accessories. In poorer neighborhoods, where Amazon is the only lifeline instead of the closed shopping malls, these changes are truly a significant challenge for them. Not only consumers, but also Amazon delivery workers, most of whom are temporary laborers, working without insurance or long-term contracts, are worried about being replaced or laid off due to tightening costs. The small startup dreams of online sellers on Amazon are gradually being extinguished by delayed shipments, rising shipping costs, and customers turning away. Once again, it is the people, not the shareholders or the CEO, who bear the brunt of the damage. If Amazon continues to get entangled in political games and loses its logistical advantage from Canada, who will save the millions of Americans who have become accustomed to the convenience and prices of Amazon? Tesla may impress people with its innovations, but Ford is the car that leaves the deepest mark in the memories of many Americans. Many middle-aged Americans have lived off Ford at some point or are currently doing so, from assembly line workers in Michigan to dealership employees in Ohio. Besides, Ford is also a car that clearly represents the friendship between the United States and Canada, because the supply chain of this brand heavily relies on Canada. Many car parts are produced or assembled in factories in Ontario and then transported across the border into the US. This is not just trade cooperation, but the lifeblood of the entire American automotive industry. However, everything is gradually changing. When Canada began to tighten preferential trade policies with the US in response to new tariff regulations from the Trump administration, Ford became one of the first companies to feel the impact. The border was tightened, transportation and production costs increased, and some components were delayed or could not be imported on time. According to a Bloomberg report, Ford had to temporarily halt production at 2 factories in the US recently due to a shortage of components imported from Canada. The company's stock dropped 6.4% in just 1 week following this news. But the impact is not only reflected in the numbers on the financial charts. It also includes workers losing their shifts. Some had their hours cut, some were laid off. For many families in Detroit, where Ford was once their only source of livelihood, this is a disaster. Not because they love Ford, but because Ford is the last hope they have left. Consumers are no better off. The price of new cars has skyrocketed due to rising input costs. The installment payment programs have been withdrawn. Thousands of Americans dream of getting an affordable Ford car to commute to work, but now they are forced to extend the lifespan of their old, worn-out vehicles, or simply give up. It all stems from a relationship between 2 nations that were once friends, now strained by political decisions made without public input. If even Ford is wavering, where will the future of the American working class go? Perhaps in your home, there is definitely some Kraft Heinz product. This is not just a food corporation, it is part of the daily lives of many Americans. And one of the factors contributing to the success of this brand is Canada. Yes, you heard that right. Hundreds of Canadian farms supply milk, grains, deli meats, and tomatoes to this corporation's factories in North America. But since the outbreak of US-Canada trade tensions, Canada has imposed higher taxes on exported agricultural products while prioritizing domestic businesses. The input material costs of Kraft Heinz immediately skyrocketed. Some supplies were disrupted. Core products had to cut production or raise prices. According to CNBC, the prices of Kraft Heinz products increased by an average of 9% in the first quarter of 2025, while sales dropped by more than 11%. Worse yet, many Canadian consumers have called for a boycott of products originating from the US to protest the Trump administration's tariff policies. What happens when even a food item considered the cheapest becomes a luxury? For working-class families, where dinner sometimes consists of just a cheese sandwich, the rising prices of essential foods are a direct blow to their quality of life. The single mother who used to buy a week's worth of groceries for just $40 now has to choose between milk or pasta. The elderly living on pensions are forced to reduce their food portions. Meanwhile, many workers at the Kraft Heinz factory in the US have started receiving notices of reduced hours. Some production areas have to pause due to a lack of input materials. I'm not afraid of losing my job because of making mistakes. I am afraid of losing my job because the government is arguing, a worker at a factory in Iowa shared. Food is not just a commodity. That is a livelihood. It is health. It is an important part for every American citizen. If even Kraft Heinz, which was once considered safe and stable, can no longer stand firm, then the question arises, who is truly protecting the basic right to live for the American people? Pepsi used to be an icon of American pop culture. A cold can of Pepsi used to be a reward after work, a familiar drink at family gatherings, something you bought without a second thought. But few would have guessed that the supply chain behind this seemingly simple soft drink is closely tied to Canada. PepsiCo does not just sell beverages. This conglomerate also owns Lay's, Quaker, Tropicana, Gatorade, and dozens of other brands. Many essential ingredients, from potatoes to corn, from flavorings to sugar, are either imported or produced at factories located in Canada. Some Pepsi bottling plants in the US use input materials shipped directly from the north, thanks to cross-border logistics routes that have been maintained steadily for decades. But that has changed. Since Canada implemented the carbon tax and prioritized Made in Canada, shipments of raw materials for PepsiCo have faced significantly increased transportation costs and taxes. Meanwhile, the Boycott American Brands movement in Canada is spreading. PepsiCo's sales in the Canadian market have plummeted severely, a double blow to both consumption and production. The consequences are starting to spread to grocery stores and supermarkets in the US. The prices of PepsiCo products have increased by 7 to 10%. The familiar snacks are now more expensive and the Pepsi cans are smaller. But for consumers tightening their spending amid the economic crisis, even a $1 difference is enough to make them give up a habit. For PepsiCo employees, especially in packaging and shipping plants, the risk of job loss is looming. When production decreases, shifts are shortened, and short-term contracts are not renewed. Those who depend on this basic salary to raise their children, pay off debts, buy health insurance, now don't know how to cope. While the government is busy confronting neighboring countries over strategic interests, the people are losing very small but very real things. Their favorite fries, a cold drink after work, and even jobs they have held for over a decade. If even PepsiCo, a global corporation with a massive supply chain, can be shaken by Canada, what awaits smaller businesses? Who will protect them? And us? FedEx has long been the logistical backbone of America. Every day, millions of packages are shipped through their system, from small gift boxes to life-saving medical equipment. For people living in rural areas where there are no convenience stores every few miles, FedEx is the only link to the rest of America. But there is a little-known fact. Canada is a vital link in FedEx's logistics network. Not only because FedEx operates hundreds of cross-border shipping routes, but also because many key logistics centers are located in the southern provinces of Canada, where goods are processed, sorted, and then shipped into the US. When Canada began tightening regulations on goods entry, imposing carbon taxes on transportation, and prioritizing domestic goods, these once smooth routes suddenly became bumpy. Delivery times have been extended, costs have skyrocketed, and worse, some routes have had to be suspended. For small businesses in the US, this is a disaster. A handmade goods shop owner in Idaho shared, "We depend 100% on FedEx. If customers have to wait an extra 3 days, they will choose a competitor." It's not just a financial loss, it's a loss of trust. The people also clearly feel this. The essential medicine didn't arrive on time, the food order was delayed, and the gift for the grandson was returned. For the middle class, who are already struggling with rising prices, having to pay a few extra dollars for each package could become a reason to stop ordering altogether. Behind each delayed package are dozens of FedEx employees losing hours, benefits, and even their jobs. Many delivery drivers, the invisible heroes of the pandemic, are now struggling to apply for unemployment benefits. If even FedEx, a symbol of speed and reliability, can be choked just because of fluctuations in Canada, what can Americans still trust in this economy? If they can't deliver your package, then who can? The relationship between the United States and Canada has been strong for decades, not only economically, but also through trust. But now, as the thread begins to unravel, it is the ordinary people who are the first to feel the tightening. A small change in foreign policy, a swing in tariffs, and the consequences do not lie in the government meeting rooms, but fall directly into the shopping cart of a single mother buying groceries, or the medicine bag of an elderly person waiting for a delivery from Walgreens. The sad thing is that those who make the decisions often do not live in a world where every penny must be counted. But millions of Americans do, and they are worried, angry, and disappointed, seeing brands that were once lifelines starting to falter. What do you think would happen if companies like Walmart, Amazon, or FedEx actually collapsed because Canada withdrew? Who will stand up to protect the people? Or will everything just be short news snippets in the financial news? Please share your thoughts in the comments section. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any videos in the upcoming series. The content in this video is based on public facts, independent analysis, and personal opinions. We do not intend to offend any organization, individual, or nation. The purpose is to spark discussion, raise awareness, and empathize with those affected by global economic fluctuations.